Good morning, everyone. Welcome to vCIO Perspectives, our monthly webinar series brought to you by Mainspring. Our focus is really to help educate businesses, small and large, on what's going on in the IT industry by sharing our vCIO's perspective on what's hot, do's and don'ts, best practices, and anything that's going to help protect your businesses and your organization's productivity and security. I'm joined today by Jolene Reed, a vCIO and senior business consultant. How are you this morning, Jolene?
Good, I'm good. Thanks for having me, Ray.
Absolutely. Well, you get the task of helping to focus on a topic that I think everybody's well aware of and a little bit spooked about, and that is security awareness training. Training in general, how to handle it these days, what we're supposed to help our clients, our employees, heck, even our family members do when they run across suspicious attempts to break into not only our businesses, but also our personal information through a variety of different tactics. So let's start off and jump into some of the basics. What is automated security awareness training, and what can you share about what organizations are doing to reduce risk?
Thanks, Ray. Yeah, this topic is really exciting in general, just because it's touched everyone, all in our personal lives and our work, whether we are really aware of it or not. So in general, automated security awareness training is a program to mitigate risk associated with employees, right? So human behavior is just as risky as technical risk within the organization. So this is aimed at solving and lowering that risk associated with your employees. So we want them to change their behavior and educate end users on what to look for, what security threats to watch out for, and how to keep the organization safe, and how to keep their personal applications and safe, because really it's going to bleed through both sides. And it's exciting because it's sort of really skyrocketed over the past few years with the increase in cybercrime. And this is really the only way to lower that risk associated with human behavior. So just looking at the overall story that I want to share with everyone today is I would like to inform everyone really of the real life risks associated with the cybercrime, what the environment looks like right now. And then I would like to go into really what this solution offers, the impact it's going to have on your organization, but overall just implementing that, what kind of return value organizations are going to find by incorporating this into their everyday work environment. So just jumping into kind of what the risks really are. We all know that security is a risk, but I don't think most business owners truly understand what's at stake and how their employees are the #1 risk associated with an incident within the organization. So looking at the statistics that have accumulated over the past couple of years with the dramatic increase in cybercrime, we're seeing, the majority of targets are small and medium-sized businesses. And they're the ones that I think the bad actors and hackers know are putting less investment into preventative protection. So when we're going through and, okay, well, what does that really look like? What kind of risks are we looking at? Statistically, it's a lot larger numbers that I think that people aren't aware of. We're looking at 79% of IT providers reporting clients are struck by ransomware. So it's not just it's never going to happen to me. We're really protecting the business. We have firewalls. We lock our doors at night. But when you're really looking at the numbers, it's pretty intimidating, looking at 66% of incidences are from phishing emails. And the #1 risk is not implementing end user training.
Yeah, something that really struck me. I know we've talked about ransomware on this series before, and you and I have had conversations, and I've heard from other CIOs that just the mindset alone of small businesses and small organizations carrying an attitude towards security awareness that there's really nothing here to steal and you're not really a target, continues to perpetuate even today. And the reality is that it's a numbers game for cyber criminals, that the easiest targets are those that don't have security controls, both training and technical security controls in place, and it's a numbers grab, right? They're able to, on a massive scale, very simply with a click, with a touch of a few buttons, capture and bring down resources to small businesses. And it's a numbers game in that they can demand a ransom, even a very small ransom, one that still today organizations are paying to get back up and running. And so it's not really a matter of what you have there is valuable, as it is that you've made it so easy and so lucrative financially, that is really where we're seeing the perception of I don't have a risk because I don't have anything, to you are the number one risk.
Right. And that's exactly right. And that goes along the lines of, it's really social engineering, where most organizations have understood that security is really a bare minimum requirement for the organization to function. There's still that gap where the social engineering, tricking employees, is really overlooked right now. So
what are some of the, yeah, if I can interrupt you, you mentioned social engineering. What are some of the more complex attempts, or even successful or not, that you've seen either personally or professionally?
Yeah, so I've gotten some tricky ones myself. Around the holidays, a really popular one is a fraudulent Amazon tracking link, right? So
Sure.
we're all busy working and trying to make sure that we right, and flooding Amazon with all sorts of purchases to get here just in time. And then so hackers know these things, and they kind of try to line up the most sophisticated attacks around things that are really tricky. They're going to trick you in your everyday life. I mean, that new employees starting, it's very common to get a text from a CEO. Hey, I need a gift card. Do you mind doing this? I'm in a rush. I'm in a meeting. As a new employee, you want to do your best. You want to provide whatever is needed to the head of the organization. And that's another common one that employees fall for. So
yeah, it's fairly common. I think we've all seen it, where email accounts have been spoofed. It looks like it's coming from, let's say, Jolene to me, with either some little change on the back end, and we're able to tell by the nuance of the email. We joke a little bit about some of the greetings or the salutations that are used in that, and those are usually a telltale sign. The text messages we seem to be pretty adept at, and that's primarily because the numbers aren't identical. And I think when cyber attackers start spoofing those text message numbers to appear as if it's the actual person's name, I think they're going to see a lot more success as well. But
absolutely.
So talk to us a little bit about training. I know training is a pretty broad topic. It can be done in a million different ways, and training means a lot of different things to a lot of different organizations. But tell me a little bit about the solutions that are available.
And it does. And really, there's a science to this solution. We've worked really hard, and other professionals in this field have really come up with a cookie cutter way that's going to address the risk most efficiently. So what that kind of looks like is layers of security, frequency, and testing the content retention. So just diving into that, we want to have a program that's addressing each of those main categories in a layer. I think with most things, most people are aware there's not a one fix-all security solution that's going to cover every basis. So along any security recommendation, there's going to be certain layers that are going to be a part of that solution. So if we can incorporate all of those layers in a minimally invasive way for the employee, then that's going to be the most beneficial, and that's when you're going to see the most return. I don't think anyone wants to sit through, death by PowerPoint anymore. We're not looking at a 1 to 2 hour video once a year annually. That just doesn't work. So while training is really important, it's also important the way you introduce it to your staff.
Yeah, like you said, there's a science to it. You mentioned a few keywords there just in the title: automated, minimally invasive, modern way of doing things. I think that speaks to where most organizations are really headed. They're trying to automate business processes. They're trying to do more with less, right? They're trying to make the best use of staff's time. They want them to be well equipped to identify issues and concerns, but they can't afford the hours upon hours of old school training. So,
and that is honestly one of the common themes for resistance to this program that I hear is how is my staff, how is this going to impact their daily responsibilities? And it's really not. So basically, how we put this together for the impact of what's going on is short, repetitive videos. So we usually recommend at least one video a month, around 10 minutes long, give or take depending on the content, and then incorporating some type of testing to make sure that the employees are really digesting that material. And how we do that, and how most programs and tool sets will do that, is send simulated phishing emails through a program that allows the user to either click on the link maliciously. That helps us measure and capture metrics for the risk in each user and how risky they are to the organization, but also allows the end user to have click a button and say, yep, this is simulated. So that's testing how well they're retaining this information in the program, really that they're listening. Because in older versions of training where you're watching a video once a year, I mean, there's no chance the employee is going to remember that in a week, a month, and so on. That's going to be long gone as other things come up and responsibilities and things of that nature.
Yeah, you mentioned a year. I would assume a lot of things change within a year when it comes to different types of methods of attacking end users. So waiting a year to get examples of the best and the latest trends, you've got an opportunity with something more, you said, more frequent and more automated, to bring to light the more the most up-to-date attempts and techniques, and helping individuals identify those versus waiting 12 months to learn about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what we want to get in front of end users, is the current trends, what to look for, continued education that's up to date and current. And through this matrix and these layers of security, really the impact to the organization is actually quite minimal. So you're really, by implementing this, you're lowering your organization's risk significantly without taking up much time from your day-to-day employees' time and responsibilities. Short, frequent trainings, keep your employees up to date. But honestly, it doesn't need to be overly pushed in the way that it's like, oh God, the dread, I have to do this training video. There's fun ways to incorporate it. I know for Mainspring, we have competitive competitions for training that we compete against our departments. We make it really fun. We have, this jackpot lottery. We want to see how long through the organization we can go without clicking on simulated emails. We discuss it per department and then announce it on quarterly meetings. And it's actually really fun. And through that, there's been greater participation, and our staff really get excited to do these trainings. So that is a trickle down effect in the positive way, where you're raising morale, the culture is cyber aware, and it's really, when you look at the pros and cons for a program structured like this, it's really hard to say what's the bad side.
Sure. Yeah, the competition aspect of it can't be underscored. It seems to have a domino effect. And you're right, it does become less of a chore and more of a part of our culture. So multi-layered approach to employee security. You talked a lot about layers. I think this visual will help kind of bring to light a little bit about what does that really mean.
Absolutely. So looking at what these pieces bring into your organization and really how they're mitigating that risk is, you have your initial assessment, which gauges the risk level that an employee is at during the onboarding of the program. You have your baseline security training. So this is really kind of gauging how much they already know as they're introduced to the program. We're, using that simulated phishing method to see how well that they're retaining the content when they're watching the continuous training for monthly releases of content. And then we have, incorporate obviously the security policies and procedures. And through this, we're also able to gain metrics the entire way. So not only can you be on board with like just the idea, but there's hard numbers, there's metrics. It shows where your risk is, and in 6 months to a year and so on, you have all this data to really see the return value by using the program through data where your risk is lowered, and you have those numbers to be able to prove that the program is doing exactly what it's designed to do through data.
I know that speaks volumes to most business leaders, being able to measure and quantify, the value of an approach. I think everybody's on board with the idea that, yeah, we should spend some time, learning about something and improving our awareness and our ability to, avoid risk. But to have a program to actually see measurable improvements, I think just reassures business owners that they're making the right type of investment, especially when we're talking about a program that really asks and demands a very minimal amount of time, with the promise of a greater amount of retention, particularly around reporting some phishing attempts, which I'm sure you'll cover as well. So
Right.
Right into value, help us understand what you're saying.
Well, so if we're looking over the overall picture is, this all, I'm sure many business owners are, all right, that sounds great, but at the end of the day, what's the cost? What's the return value? And so just kind of going back to that, the metrics and the measured risk and the data, that's going to show you that return value. And the cost entry point, you're looking at a program is just about what you pay for Netflix per user. It's really not, there's not going to be this huge invasive cost, especially when you're looking, I mean, you can see the numbers on the screen right now, just associated with a post incidents. Sure. So it's not going to be cheap for the organization to go through a breach or a ransomware attack. And if you think about it, all it takes is one employee to risk the organization significant funds. So if you're looking at okay, well, what's better, what's worse? Around $10 a month to protect an employee versus what they could potentially cause the organization.
Yeah, and I'm honing in, as someone who's been in part of a number of different organizations where you've got constituents or stakeholders or customers, the average notification cost, when breaches occur, there's normally a set of procedures of who needs to be identified, that their information is now out in the open or potentially suspect. We've probably all been inundated with notifications letting us know, if you want to go hark back a few years, the target breaches, some of the other breaches that have occurred, we get notification. Usually it's a requirement from the vendor. Then there's an offer for having a subscription to services to help clean our data out in the dark web, which is never really clean. But what's not pictured here in this table, that's very difficult to quantify, would be when a breach occurs and an organization now has to notify its constituents, its customers, and whomever. It then calls into question what quantifiable, in dollar figure effect did it have on the organization's reputation, right? If it's a membership organization, for an example, right, and their membership data has been exposed, does that impact the next buyer's decision or the current buyer's decision to maintain that membership based on the faith that their information they're using within the system is going to be safeguarded?
Absolutely. And if we're looking at, everything that is at risk, and then we add up, and then from the earlier side, when we're looking at the risk being around 71 to 75% that this will occur, not an if, but this will occur 75% of the time for small and medium-sized businesses, then a Netflix subscription cost doesn't sound that bad in relation. So really, it's something relatively minimally invasive, low cost, that you can really protect your organization. When you're looking at the risk, it's really kind of a no-brainer. Really, when you fully understand what this is going to provide for your organization, and this is going to stay with your employees throughout their working in life. This is really an educational platform that's going to ideally just get them to stop and think before they act.
Sure. Yeah, the attack surface now, the targets are the individuals, right? So whatever they learn here, it's going to be passed forward on their personal life, their families. They have the same level of awareness that they have to protect their information on their personal devices, on their personal email, on their bank accounts, and so forth as well. So it's definitely, it's got an investment beyond just the company. Just real quick, if anybody has a question, please use the Q&A function on the meeting. I'm happy to pause throughout and have Jolene address your questions. We covered a lot of ground in 20 minutes, Jolene. A couple questions that have come in. Let's see. We've got, is there a minimum number of employees that it makes sense to be working with where they do this program? Is it start at 5 people? Is there a minimum or a maximum where this program is particularly useful?
One
individual, that's the minimum?
Really, I mean, if you think about the fact that one individual could cause an incident to occur, then yeah, it's one. So it really is, sure, should apply to the smallest to the largest and anywhere in between.
Well, and a good scenario for that, I would share. We work with a lot of government consulting firms. We're their IT firm, where their back office staff who are using their personal devices, it's very minimal. Most of their staff are on government site, using government furnished equipment, and there's the back office staff where you maybe only have 2-3 people, but they're the individuals who have the keys to all the corporate information and potentially government information that they're supposed to be safeguarding. So as far as honing your awareness and your ability to identify and avoid risks, really has no minimum, because there is one person with all the keys or 2 people with all the keys to a lot of more sensitive information around a company. So that's a good point. Okay. What have you seen as far as working with insurance carriers? You've presented some information here from travelers. How are insurance carriers working their way into the conversation and the fold these days when it comes to cybersecurity awareness training?
Absolutely. I think, like most insurance companies, they offer the policies and they're there, but at the end of the day, I think if you asked any cyber insurance agent, ideally they don't want to have an incident occur, right? So they don't want to be paying out, sure, the policy. So ideally, a lot of cyber insurance carriers, what they've done to get organizations to implement this level of protection, sometimes they offer discounts on the policy, and now it's getting to a point where they've run through the discount portion to get clients on board. Now it's becoming a requirement moving forward. Sure. Now there's no question, if you want your cyber insurance renewed, it is a compliance requirement to be able to hold that policy. So that's, sure, really, from their perspective, it's just as important as any other critical level of security implementation. Yeah. So yeah, from what I've seen,
years ago, cyber insurance was relatively new, and it was pretty simple, 1-2 page policy requirements from insurance carriers. Now you're seeing not only the requirement to have an evidence of a security awareness training program, but evidence of other security controls, right? Disaster recovery plans, continuity of operations plans, even some other solutions like multi-factor authentication, which we talked about a few months ago. So it's a risk game, and everybody has a financial stake in it. So I can understand why they're requiring organizations, small and large, to have these provisions in place. Okay, I'm going back to the Q&A. What are some of the trends you're seeing beyond email phishing coming into play when it comes to just general security awareness?
Well, some of the trends is the biggest trend is anything associated. I think I coined this term earlier, just the social engineering aspect. So they're using whatever means to basically trick employees somehow into letting these hackers gain access. So whether that's through text message, through calling. I think the text and calling were pretty quick to realize that it's a scam of picking up the phone, but through email, through social media, through LinkedIn. There's, LinkedIn is really growing in career popularity, and they're utilizing that. They'll reach out, have fake profiles, look to seek a connection, and then they'll initiate something that's going to trick you into clicking something. So whether it be, hey, I really like what you do for your career, here's my resume, do you mind looking it over? I'd love a chance to maybe learn more about your organization. And then, that's malicious link, and that's going to let them into more data than I think people really are aware of. That one click is not just going to be, a virus on their computer. If they gain contacts to employees, contacts to client base, they're going to be able to further their reach and trick other people on behalf of you when they've gained control of your email, or they've gained control of your LinkedIn profile, and they're sending out messages and connections without you even realizing it. So it's really this kind of spider web effect from this one point of infiltration.
Some of the problems with prior campaigns and prior efforts to get organizations to stop what they're doing, it seems like most incidents and most failures of falling for phishing campaigns happen to people who are busy and they do it on their phone, or they're multitasking. Part of the challenge around stopping those individuals, having them think about what they're looking at, and then have them question whether this is coming from the right source, has been that last step, which has been, stop, think, and then connect with that individual separately, right? Pick up the phone and call them, text them separately, get up and maybe talk to them, that in the office, or give them a call. That last step of connecting to say, is this really you, has been typically the point of failure, right? Nobody wants to slow down long enough to have those conversations, to make those connections. Their choices are, well, it looks about right, and they make the mistake and they click on something. So some of the more modern ways, or the technical simple solutions that are available in security awareness programs exist. Can you share kind of what that easy, that last step and how that's being facilitated today?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the hardest part, right? So how do you can protect your network, you can have firewalls, you can have antivirus, but how exactly do you prevent your employees from clicking on something because they're busy, or changing their behavior to reach out versus just rushing through something?
Right.
How do you prevent an employee from forwarding an email they feel like is suspicious to the entire company and
So
asking,
that's not
is
supposed
this
to be the way to doing
suspicious?
it then? Forwarding the same suspicious email to everybody?
Yeah, definitely not. So really it's like, how do you change that? And that's exactly what this program does. And it's the only solution for
Sure.
that, right? So it's not even like you have your choice of, multi-factor authentication is important, right? There's lots of ways to implement that secondary layer of protection. This is the only way to target changing an employee's behavior and getting them to stop and think before they act.
So
So
most
that's
of those
why
solutions
it's
and
so
those easy
critical.
buttons. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Most of those solutions that exist out there, the technology solutions for these programs, they all seem to be honing in on that. How do we get that suspicious email into the hands of security engineers and experts to check it for individuals, right? Whereas they're not the ones having to necessarily do all the deep diving and picking up the phone and calling someone in finance to ask if this was legitimately them. The focus has really been around, how do we quickly and easily allow them to get that in the hands of their IT department? They can do the investigation, and then they can get back to the end user, let them know whether it was a real phishing or attack or attempt rather, or if it's something that's legitimately something they're allowed to click on. So it seems like that simplification at the last step has come a long way since this all began.
It really has, and it's significantly, I think, and the feedback from clients and their employees is they love it. In fact, that quick and easy step of verifying through an IT professional with the pretty instant feedback, whether or not it's legitimate, is that also alleviates the step of them getting on the phone and calling someone. Sure. So it's almost easier to have a professional verify the legitimacy and have it just be instant and easy.
Right. Well, it falls kind of in line with when there's a technical problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, most organizations want their staff working on things that they're supposed to be working on rather than spending, you know, hours a week or a day troubleshooting their own technical issues. You know, do they have the tools and resources? Do they have the ability to lean on a technical support team that can research the best way of doing something? And maybe even identify a root problem across the organization, right? If someone successfully identifies a risk or an attempt, it informs the technical department to be able to, you know, dig deeper into the rest of the network and see where else there might be opportunities to, you know, prevent bad actors.
Absolutely.
A couple other questions that came in. How long do you need to conduct employee training? Is it, you know, 365 days, a year, you know, forever? What's the rhythm there?
Honestly, my professional opinion is forever. I mean, right? It's continued training that learns with IT advancements, right? So cyber criminals are never going to stop thinking of the next best way to trick you and steal data from your organization. So therefore, it's really just something that once you kind of incorporate it in your organization, it's really there to stay.
Yeah. Well, the best practices change as often as the different techniques change, right? So I think the continuous learning cycle and what you mentioned, having something that's automated that puts the latest and greatest tactics in front of, you know, your colleagues, your friends, your family, it seems like it fits in line with what everybody's facing, right? They're facing new challenges every day, and we just got to keep them informed in a brief way, an effective way. Okay. Well, that's it for our questions. I don't have anything else to add. I think we covered a lot of ground here today. I think your background in helping tackle the challenge, which is how do you change employee behavior on a topic that is a bit gloom and doom in a very simple and automated way and cost-effective way, really, when you get down to it. I love the Netflix analogy. You know, the cost of a Netflix or any other subscriptions for your employees in safeguarding your organization's intellectual capital and really safeguarding those individuals. They're going to go home, they're going to log into machines on their personal network. Maybe they browse to certain networks and just equipping them to be you know, better aware of the risks and concerns, and then bringing those habits back to work. So appreciate you taking the time. We've got a couple webinars coming up. I wanted to let everyone know in September, we're going to be talking about software automation and streamlining business processes. And then in October, we're going to have an Ask Me Anything CIO session where our vCIOs are going to be all joining us, taking questions from the panel and any attendees on a wide range of topics. Security seems to always find its way into every conversation, so we're looking forward to that. And then we also have an on-demand webinar from last month's session around how do information systems today impact organizations' ability to hire and retain employees. So, Jolene, I appreciate you taking the time this morning. This webinar will also be made available on demand to everybody who attended. You'll get a copy, and it'll also be posted on our YouTube channel. So thanks again for taking time. Thanks everyone for joining us. Look forward to seeing everybody in September.